Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show. My name is Elle Russ, and I am a #1 best-selling author and master coach. My intention is to inspire, educate, and motivate you with weekly content featuring amazing guests and solo episodes. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about me, my courses, free masterclasses, partner discounts, and much more. Enjoy the show. Thomas Moore, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
So you've written many, many other books, 24 other books, but you have a new one called The Eloquence of Silence. I love the title. I think to sort out for everybody what you do, you bring together spirituality, mythology, and psychology in the arts, and you emphasize the importance of images and imagination. Tell us about your trajectory in life. How did you get into these topics? What started you on this train that led to 25 books?
Well, I know. Actually, it's more than that by now. So, yes, it's a strange thing. I started quite young because actually, I began when I was a teenager. I went to study to be a Catholic priest. I was raised in an Irish Catholic family. And that's a long time ago. And at that time, it was very common for a young man to do that. And, having classical education from 14, learning Latin and Greek, that really got me started on wanting to learn things that were interesting and not the usual. And I continue with that, although I did study music for a while. I ended up with a PhD in religious studies. And I began writing about the things that I found exciting in my studies, but also in my practice as a therapist.
Tell us some of the connections between spirituality, mythology, the arts. Give us some of the things you've sort of pieced together, or an example for those out there that can kind of wrap their head around it.
Yeah, sure. Well, I got very involved in questions of theology, about, the big questions in life, what gives you meaning, and what's right, what's wrong, what should you commit yourself to, and what does it mean to live a life that ends, that kind of a thing. All these big questions in theology. And then I got involved in depth psychology, reading Freud and Jung, and I became a friend of a wonderful psychologist, James Hillman. He and I were very good friends. I learned a lot from him. So what I put together then, all these things, seems to me they make sense. So some of the big questions that theologians ask are also asked by people who write films or plays, novels. They're really exploring the same things. And I think a really good painter is also exploring these ultimate issues. So actually, they all fit together. A good psychologist, a good therapist, when you're talking to somebody who's in trouble, you have to be wide open. It's not all about emotions. It's about people's search for some greater source of meaning. And so you have to be able to do all of it. And at least the way I practice my work, all of these different things you mentioned all fit together.
So tell us about the eloquence of silence, because you talk about, or you make a case for an easier, lighter way of moving through life by experiencing peace, calm, and openness of emptiness. I love that phrase. I'm sure everyone's looking for more calm and peace in their life, but we're in a rat race. Go, go, go. We got a million, we're on the Instagram 24 hours a day. And
right.
So where do we start, and tell us more about what you're offering here?
Well, what I'm writing about, this is not a book to tell you how to do it. This is a book of 30 stories that come from the spiritual traditions and other important people to me, and then my reflections on what they wrote. And some of the stories are kind of funny and simple, and other of the passages are pretty profound. So the idea for me here in this book is to set a different way of looking at life. It's not a how to go about things, but it's more about how you might be able to think more deeply about what's going on. And in that way, you might realize that the way you're spending your time, like let's say you might notice that you buy a lot of things, you buy a lot, or you eat too much, or you drink too much. That filling up is a sign that it might be a good idea to empty instead of fill, to empty out more, not to maybe have quite as much around, to not to be quite so busy, to take a look at your schedule, and maybe to focus on what you do and really do it. Emptiness in the traditions means not having so much going on in your head. Like when you're talking to somebody, there may be this script going on in your head where you say, I hope that they approve of me. I hope that it looks like I'm smart, I hope that they see that I have some standing, by what I own, that kind of thing. If you could empty some of those concerns, some of those thoughts that get in the way, you would find yourself living a more meaningful life and having better conversations with people and maybe having better relationships.
Can you give us one of these ancient or modern stories that you use to illustrate something that can make us take a little bit a deeper look?
Sure. The very first story in the book is one I like. It's a story about this character, Nasruddin, who is talked about, especially in the Middle East, in the stories they use there. And he lives in a small village, and he's a spiritual teacher, and he's respected, but he's also a little odd at the same time. So in this story, one of the villagers comes to him and says, I'm going to be going away and living in another place, and I'm going to miss you because you've been important to me. And I've noticed that you have this nice ring on your finger. And I thought that if you would give me that ring, every time when I'm away, I look at my finger and see that ring, I would think of you. And Nasruddin thinks about that. And he says, I have a better idea. He says, what if I keep my ring? And then every time you look at your finger and you see that there's nothing on it, you'll think of me. It's really, he's clever.
Yeah.
But that's a deeper story than it seems to be, because it's really about how a good teacher, helps you not by giving you more things, but in some ways by taking away or helping you appreciate, what you've got, and you don't have to keep adding to your life.
Mm. When you talk about having an appreciation of the quiet spaciousness in our world, what do you mean by that? Are you meaning reflect in nature, in silence somewhere, being able to just sort of pan the camera out and admire and swim in the awesomeness of it all? Or what do you mean by that?
Well, I think that when you go into the natural world, in a way, we belong to that natural world, but at the same time, it's strange. It's not us, and we have to learn it the way it works. And in a way, then, we are entering something that is unknown and strange. And that, too, is a form of emptiness. To be able to discover the world. This is what, by the way, when I say that, I'm quoting Henry David Thoreau, who said that if you really want to learn about something, it has to be strange to you. You have to forget everything that you think you know about it. So I think that's really a good idea. You go to the ocean, or you go up on a mountain, and what you do is you discover this wide open world, and that openness is a kind of emptiness. It's not what you're used to and what you can control and fully understand. And being in that place is really good for people, I think. I think we all know that. We do go into nature, and we don't think about it too much. We don't know what we're looking for, but maybe just to get away. But to get away from that known world that's so full of activities for us is a kind of emptying out.
Yeah, it's why, people will go on a vacation and by the fourth day, they're like, ooh,
I know.
and they get back and it's like, yeah, because you took the time to just go and be in the silence or sit there and stare at the water for 5 hours without checking emails and whatnot. But you can do
Exactly.
that in your own life without money and vacationing. I mean, I even suggest to people, listen, if you can't go anywhere and you're trapped in an apartment in Manhattan, you can go onto YouTube and look at beautiful hour-long, beautiful scapes of wonderful naturescapes and different kind of things that can take you somewhere mentally and emotionally without having to physically go get on a plane and pay for that ticket. There's so many ways to kind of do that, and I agree with you. And I think what you're saying is I appreciate tapping into the unknown, being interested and excited about the unknown, and sort of having faith in somewhere in there, not necessarily religious faith, but faith that the unknown can bring amazing potentials. And I think, right, we're in our head every day thinking about the known, right, the worries, instead of really expanding our minds. So how does somebody start to get this awareness? If they're go, 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 and they're like, oh, this sounds good. I want to be peaceful and chill and be able to reflect. What are the steps or some things you can share with our audience to say, hey, this is what you should think about to get you inspired?
There are things in ordinary life that give us this taste of emptiness that I'm talking about, this kind of open feeling. For example, one thing I always recommend to my clients is if they're too busy, too active, and too much in the world around them, that hyperactive world, they might just start cooking more, like the cookie, simple thing like that, of having to maybe go out, as I did yesterday, went to a farm stand and got some vegetables. And just going to the farm stand is something in itself, You're going to that world where it's very simple. And you just have to focus and meditate, in a sense, on tomatoes and zucchini or whatever it is you're looking for. And then you've got to think about, how am I going to cook this and what am I going to cook? And you go to your kitchen then, and that actually cooking and thinking about the cooking and watching things cook is a kind of meditating. It's a form of meditation, of emptying your mind in a way, because now what you're doing is focusing your attention on making sure you don't overcook these things. And you have to watch it heating and bubbling and maybe burning. That happens to me too often. So I think that it's very simple things like that are right next to us, right there for us. Now, some people may cook all the time, and it doesn't mean that. But I find a lot of people don't. And that's one thing they can do. But see, I'm including the whole process of going out and getting the food and getting some really fresh food. And that's, I think, a good start, because for many of us, I think we start at changing our lives by eating better.
Yes, and also then well, I'm all for that, and then it takes the focus off of the mundane daily whatevers and puts you into a different space. I absolutely think that's a great one. Of all of your years of being a psychotherapist, what
Uh-huh.
are some or one or two that really stand out to you, 180-degree turns on people who maybe came in, had an overactive mind, were in this over analytical multitasking, spiral staircase, and came out enjoying life and being able to enjoy that emptiness?
One way that I see a lot is that people discover an art of some kind, to get involved in the arts. I don't think we understand in this world today too much what the arts are all about. They're very important to me, because it's not only getting away from the usual activity. If you want to, for example, if you take up painting, and you're going outside and you're painting something outside, you are really focused on that, and you're not going to be hyperactive then. Really, you're still suddenly, and you're learning something, a skill that most people can learn. Maybe not everybody, but most people can learn. Usually, some art, and I that's why I think that would be one of the most important things. And I see people doing that. An art that many people get involved in, and maybe we don't think of as an art, is gardening,
Mm.
and learning about plants, and getting your fingers in the ground and watching things grow. I mean, I think that's an amazing thing. I live in the country, and I'm looking around at the trees around me now. Things that we planted just a few years ago are suddenly huge, and you're watching this thing, and you are taking care of these plants and flowers and vegetables, and being there in the natural world that way, in gardening, is, I find I get that feedback from people. That is very, very important discovery for them.
I love that. And also, of course, putting our hands in the soil, being in nature is
Yes.
so amazing for our immune system. And there are so many studies about what it can do for our mind. I also feel, and I'm sure you would agree, it's probably just a known thing, but when you take yourself out of the world, you want to go stare at a beach or sit in nature for a while, and you're just kind of, that's to me, the reason I forced myself to do that is because that is when creative inspirations and new thoughts come in. They're not they're coming in all day, but if I'm focused on work, I'm doing this, I'm in between multitasking. When I go out into nature, which I'm immersed in because I live in nature and I go hiking every day, I have solved life problems by the end of a hike. The panning the camera out, the being immersed in that environment without technology is something for me anyway that helps me in that respect. I'm assuming it just is a thing.
Well, yes, I think so too. And one of the principles that I bring out in this book is that in order to do anything, in order to be creative, you have to empty. You can't have something, you can't listen to yourself unless you have stilled your mind in some way, and stilled your body too, where you don't have to be hyperactive and doing something all the time. If you're always active, you can't listen to yourself. You don't really know what's going on, and that is a psychological problem. Then, if you don't know, we talk about knowing yourself, and a lot of times people think, well, that's figuring yourself out. It's intellectual, but actually, I don't think it is. The essence of it is not intellectual. It's more paying attention, like to your body, even. Like, is your heart racing? Or do you feel calm? Are you, as I said earlier, are you overeating? That would be a sign that you're not calm. And in order to pay attention to those signs in yourself, you need a certain quiet. You've got to find yourself in a place where you can feel what's going on, and then be able to maybe tell somebody about it, talk to a friend. It's so important to have conversations with friends about things like this, where you can say, I noticed lately that I'm just feeling anxious about things, and usually I'm pretty calm. I wonder what's going on. And you can talk that over and pay attention to who you are. You need to be calm enough to notice what's happening, especially in your body.
What is, you've been doing this work a very long time. You've been evolving yourself internally. How can you give us an example of a way in which you might have been, thought, felt, and then through this work and through your personal growth, how has that changed? Like in hindsight, looking back, saying, oh, when I was young or when I was in this phase of my life, I used to think this or used to be like this or react like this. And then I made a shift. What's a major shift or an example you can give us from your own life with your work that has helped yourself?
Yeah, well, it certainly has happened. For me. When I was younger, I think I was more anxious. I know I was somewhat more anxious about things like let's say when I was starting out as a therapist, I think, can I do this? You know, it's should I take a chance on learning how to do this work? Do I have it in me to do that kind of work? And now, as an older person, I let go of all those questions. I don't worry about it. I'm so relaxed when I do my work now. It's shocking to me. Uh, I just did an hour of therapy before talking to you, and I was so at ease because maybe it's part of getting older. I've learned a lot, but we're talking about emptying. I've emptied out a lot of those self-doubts and questions about my abilities. And I don't worry about it anymore. I just totally relaxed. I start talking to somebody and I know where to go. And what they talk about, I've heard many times before. So I guess aging is part of it, or having
Yeah.
having
Would
some
it?
experience.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just that I just feel you were asking me about what has changed. That's the biggest thing I think I've noticed. That now from having experience and trusting myself, I feel that I can empty myself of worries and preoccupations that used to be there, but now no longer exist.
What a great place to be. What's in all of your years, what would you say is one of the most profound experiences you could share with us, whether it's personally or professionally, something that was sort of a life changer or game changer, or just something really amazing that stands out to you?
Well, that's a tough question,
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of those
There are
moments.
several things. I've had a pretty quiet life, I have to say. I haven't had a terribly exciting life, and I like that. I'm kind of an easygoing, quiet person. But I can say that some of the experiences I've had have really stood out as being remarkable for me. I'm a musician, for one thing. I studied music composition in school. I was a classical musician. And I really loved it, but I didn't think I could make a profession of it. So I went into psychology. But one day I got an invitation from the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra in Canada. And they asked if I would come out to their and be at one of their or normal performances, and if I would read from my books on stage between the pieces that they played. And they said they would also be happy to play some of the music I've written. So I went out to Vancouver and had a wonderful time with the orchestra. And I sat there at a performance which just filled the theater filled with people, very, very excited. And to hear my music performed and having people listen to it, and to be out there having my words spoken out there on stage in the context of music. That was one of the most remarkable moments I've had in my life.
Mm. Wow, that's lovely. I would love to, aside from doing therapy with people, of course, everyone, by the way, we will put this in the show notes, but if you went to Thomas More, Moore, soul.com, there's also some videos. He's got the wonderful video, the Oprah interview. There's some great interviews with you. You also have a course that you're doing this summer. I don't know how often you do them. Tell us, aside from your books or working with you personally, what are ways we can benefit from you other than the ways I just mentioned?
Well, I'd like to say a little more about the course that I do. It's actually
Yes, love that.
it's almost a year long. It's weekly, but we take breaks. So they're 6-week courses, and I have to tell you, these courses are life-changing to people. I just see people changing before my eyes in the sense of not becoming what I want them to be, but to be going deeper into their life and maybe not being so attached, as you've been saying, to the rat race of the world around us, but discovering new things that are of great interest to them. And so that has been so satisfying to me, very, very satisfying. I just did that, last week. We just finished a course last week. And we had a Zoom gathering where we all met just to talk about anything on Sunday. And I left that and I thought, this is exactly what I want to be doing, because these are people who are willing and anxious, willing and eager to explore new ideas and to talk to each other about these things. And in my life, I've always been interested in education and how we could teach better. I've taught at every level, every single level. I've taught from, maybe, I don't think I did kindergarten, but I did first grade all the way through to graduate school and universities. And I've always been interested in experimental learning and trying to learn in such a way that people really learn on their own, and they don't learn from someone forcing them in any way. This same idea, I'm wandering a bit here, but the same idea comes up when people ask me, I've written over 24 books, and they say, well, you must be really disciplined to write all those books. And I tell them, I don't feel any discipline whatsoever. I'm the most undisciplined person I know. I just do it because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I have great pleasure from it. And that's how I feel about teaching. And I tell the students who come to me, I have two principles. One is friendship, that we are friends and that you find friends here, and that we do it in a friendly way. And secondly, that you do it with pleasure. And no one telling you what to do or where you feel you must fulfill requirements. That's not what we're doing. I tell them this is not school. This is learning. Very different thing.
I love that your new book is, teaching through ancient and modern stories. That is literally one of the best ways to learn, is through sort of like real life or stories that illustrate a point. And those can be in art and movies and film too. I think a lot of people learn things that way. I love, there's a book, she's now deceased, the writer, but her name's Angeles Aaron, and she wrote a book called Gratitude. And it's just literally stories, ancient stories, modern stories that just reflect and exemplify stories of gratitude. And it's just a lovely, sort of foray into that. And I love that you did that with this book. The course that you're talking about, it's called, is it just Soul Psychology?
Yeah, soul psychology. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so everyone, you can go to thomasmooresoul.com/courses, or just press that tab and check out that if you'd like to be a part of connecting with him in that way. What are some other things in life that, you've written several books, you give wonderful advice, you're helping people throughout the world. What are some things you can leave with our audience as far as, just things you might want them to take a look at, or maybe another story that's really profound that would help us?
That's a good idea. I tell you, another area that's of great interest to me is the relationship between psychology and spirituality, how those two things overlap. And what I've been interested in all my life is, right from the very beginning, that when I was exploring things, is to bring together, to create a spiritual life that is very much involved in the world. That's not an escape from the world. I think there's a lot of spirituality that's an escape. It could even be meditating sometimes. As good as that is, sometimes it can be an escape. You have to ask yourself what you're doing. I think that if you can do this spiritual life as part of your ordinary daily experience, that's the best thing. So that's what I've been writing about all these years. I wrote a book called A Religion of One's Own, I probably shouldn't have used the word religion because that a lot of people don't like it, but maybe we could call it a spirituality of your own, so that you find ways to put together experiences that are meaningful, that take you out of yourself, that are meditative in some ways or contemplative. You create a life that has really good values too, where you really try to live your values and think about things. So to me, that's what is lacking in our contemporary world. We are moving more and more toward a secular existence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah, you
not.
talk about that, like making your own religion almost, right? Like it
That's
doesn't
right.
have to be, yeah.
That's right. It's not. I'm not recommending at all following the religious traditions. You can do that, and I really would support it. But I think, generally speaking, the religious institutions have not kept up with what's happening in the world. You know, they're not really helping people as much as they should. I mean, I'm critical of them for that reason. And I've been close to them, and I continue to support the traditions. I think it's wonderful to learn from the traditions of the world. But on the other hand, just to sign up for some organization, I don't think that's what's called for today, these days. What we have to do is find a way to really have extraordinary experiences in life and maybe to do work that is really meaningful to us and to cultivate our communities and friendships and really tackle the great issues of the day, you know, like climate change and things like that. And we still have terrible remnants of racism and all these things, sexism. I really get that. I'm 82 now. You know, I get sexist remarks quite often. And I think that to live your values and to, this is one good reason to live a natural life, to live in nature, and maybe to read. You know, I know reading is not so common today, but I still would suggest reading. And if you're going to watch movies, once in a while, watch some really, really strong, valuable films. And in that way, what you do is you create a life that is really solid and it's open-ended, that you do touch on the infinite in your ordinary life. And to me, that's a way of getting away from the secularism that's all around us.
Now I'm going to just play skeptic devil's advocate right now because I'm imagining a person out there who's like, look, you know, you mentioned the word spirituality, even if you're saying not attached to religion. I don't believe there's anything out there. It's just big space, whatever. How am I supposed to, if I'm a skeptic that believes that all of this is crap and garbage, then how can that person tap into a spirituality, or how should they start to look at that word and what it could do for them if they're a complete skeptic about things involving, right, you know, like energy and, right, you know, religion or any of this kind of stuff? Because that word spirituality would turn that person off. But how can they tap into something for themselves there?
Well, actually, the fact is, I don't like that word spirituality much either. I just used it and I kind of choked on it. But so, you know, it's not, I don't like it that much, but I don't know of another word now to use. People ordinarily now are saying, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, if they're anything. If it's speaking to the secular person who thinks, well, you know, science is really the source of my knowledge, and I don't want to put my faith in anything that can't be proven. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to be silly about this. I don't want to, you know, there's so much around me that does sound like it's empty. It doesn't have anything behind it. Well, you know, we've had these religions in our existence for thousands of years. I don't think they're all without basis. I really don't. I think we do have to think for ourselves now in the 21st century. But I would suggest that to give it a try, to only go to really solid sources, people who are intelligent, who can give you some ideas that you feel would be intelligent. and that makes sense to you. And there's so many ways out there to go beyond yourself, to touch on parts of life that are on the edge, taking you right to the edge. I don't know about other people, but I have found in the past few weeks and months that the information coming to us from the Webb telescope about universes, of changing our ideas about basic physics and astronomy, they have really, to me, opened up a lot of questions that are very big. And I would call those spiritual questions.
Yeah.
And so that's
I love that. I want to highlight that because one of the things, I'm not religious, I consider myself spiritual, but I kind of, it's a strange thing to say, but I feel like the cosmos is my religion. Like documentaries about the cosmos, things you're talking about with physicists. And one of my favorite ones was from like 2010 from National Geographic called Into the Universe. And these inspire awe and amazing questions and kind of put me in that philosophical, spiritual world. And I love that feeling, which is why I often tap into those documentaries. So I love your suggestion, because maybe for those super skeptics, you can tap into sort of the new science and the physics or the unknown things that are going on within there. And that might be something that can inspire awe and appreciation.
Yes, I think so, exactly. There's another thing, too, that I'm exploring now. Maybe not everyone would be interested, but I want to let you know about it. My next book, as far as I know, you never know till they come out, but I think my next book is going to be about Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau and Emily Dickinson. I live in New England, and I feel close to these people of the 19th century who had a community in Concord, Massachusetts. At least some of them did, Thoreau and Emerson and a few others. And what they did, they were living at a time when they felt that religion was failing, that the institutions were no longer viable. And yet they didn't want to give up on it altogether. So they created what they called transcendentalism, which is really kind of a natural spirituality. And Henry David Thoreau spent most of his time in nature. He was in a canoe most of his time, or wearing his boots. And so it's very natural, very much in the world. But they wanted to create a world that was not the old world, not doing things the way people always did them. Like they wanted some new ideas about teaching children, and they wanted new ideas about health and healing and what to eat. And they were very much engaged in trying to free slaves who were there at the same time. That was a very big moral issue at the time for them. I think, and they're so good. They're such good writers, and Thoreau especially. I would really strongly recommend that people thinking about their Americanism and wanting to enrich their sense of being American, to read great American writers like Thoreau. And I think it would be very pleasurable, enjoyable to do that. Especially what I find most enjoyable is to read his journals. Just read the journals, his journal entries. And they're very simple, but they create this, what they call transcendentalism, which I don't know what we'd call that today, but it's very much what you're describing, Elle, of looking at science and letting that expand your mind and bring you out into a philosophy that is bigger than just the secular one.
I love it. Well, for everybody, go to thomasmooresoul.com. Thank you so much for joining us, and everyone get his new book, The Eloquence of Silence, and check out his courses and some videos on his website that are great as well. I so appreciate your time. Is there any last thoughts you'd like to leave with our audience before we go?
Well, I don't know. All I can say, I guess, is that I play the piano every day, usually in the morning, to get my day going. I would recommend that anyone think about developing an artistic practice as just part of their daily life. Nothing too fancy, nothing too much, but make it part of daily life.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. And for everyone else, we'll see you next week. Hey, listeners. Over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products, and I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.